I'm here with Ferran, CEO at Peersyst, which is the organization and company that has built the Ripple XRP Ledger sidechain that is built on the Cosmos tech stack, also integrates via the IBC Eureka. So, Ferran, first off, congratulations on the big launch. I think there was a lot of work and probably a huge effort. And second, how are you doing? How's everything going?
Thank you, Cito. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here with your community, which I know it's pretty big. And yeah, everything is good. We've done the launch about 3 weeks from now, and I can't complain. The launch were quite successful, and nothing bad happens, at least, which is a big success already. So doing good. We could, stress down a little bit, and now, taking time for the long run to, keep building the ecosystem and growing and supporting partners there. So there's a big amount of work to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, and you were also speaking last year at Cosmos, and we also had Ripple participation there, which I think for some of the specifically Cosmos community was a bit weird to see, but I think now we have a lot more tangible stuff and something that we can really see and use. And I think it's always great to see other ecosystems converging, coming together, co-engineering stuff. So I think it would be good maybe if you can share like a little bit of kind of the backstory of your company, your relation to Ripple, your relation to Cosmos, and how this XRP Ledger sidechain then came to life in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah. So our company started in the very early days. We've seen Ethereum rise, right? So we started on crypto about 2015, 2016. And since day one, we've built this company, Peersyst, to start supporting some protocols and infrastructure across different networks. And about around 2021 or 22, I guess, we started working closer with Ripple. We had a good expertise in building solutions with technologies similar to Ripple. We had a previous experience with a technology that has also had also these like pre-built features, and they were also very focused on payments and banking. So we thought we had a good experience for that, and we started applying and doing some stuff on top of the XRP Ledger. But very quickly also we've figured out that with the capabilities that the XRP Ledger had, there were a lot of potential or a lot of opportunity on improving or growing the programmability capabilities. And talking to Ripple, we've figured out that the best way to do that was through a sidechain, because doing programmability on the XRP Ledger, it's very tough. The XRP Ledger has been live 2 or 3 years before Ethereum. So when the ledger was created, the concept of general purpose programmability didn't even exist. So it's not built from its roots to scale for that. Now there is the engineering team at Ripple. It's looking into add programmability directly on the XRP Ledger, which I think it's fantastic, but I think it will be a huge effort, and we don't know exactly how much programmability will be achieved there. So the fast track, or one of the routes to improve programmability then, was to launch via layer 2, right? That a lot of people were doing it. Launching a layer 2 is very interesting, because it's also not only providing you the opportunity to add new features without compromising security or decentralization, but also it helps you scale in horizontally or vertically through another chain. And also it allows you to add much more features. So just for example, interoperability with IBC, that is something that if we had to do an amendment on the XRP Ledger for supporting IBC, it will take a lot of time and it will be tough. But with our technology, which is based on Cosmos SDK, we had interoperability natively, right? So that was a good way to do that. And so we started doing research with Ripple. We've been working together, to be clear, for that. This is not only Peersyst. It has been Peersyst and Ripple. We've done a joint team for that. And after about 3 years of research, development, onboarding, and many other things, we've been able to launch finally the XRPL EVM mainnet on the, I think it was on the 30th of June 2025.
Can you maybe provide more context on why you chose to build on a Cosmos SDK? Because there's so many stacks out there. So why or how did you end up building this on Cosmos?
Yeah, this comes back from our research we've done back in 2 or 3 years ago. When we had a few requirements, we defined a few requirements with Ripple. So one of those were essentially that we wanted to have a very similar consensus mechanism as the XRP Ledger mainnet, so we can have a chain that it's living with the spirit and with the same constitution of in terms of governance as the XRP Ledger. Also, we wanted to have XRP as native currency. And for that, we've been looking into different options. We were not about to build another Ethereum or EVM chain from scratch. So we've seen opportunities out there, and we found essentially Polkadot. We find also Avalanche subnets, and we find also Evmos. That was, well, I think at the time was actually Ethermint still. Then it moved to Evmos. Then it moved to Cosmos EVM right now. And with all these opportunities, we didn't know a lot about Cosmos, but we find out that this was the solution that was much more modular. So for example, we've built the proof of authority governance module that we could put as a model there, and it fits very well. We had the EVM. We could also add the bridge on the Genesis block to bridge XRP as a native currency. So all those things were very helpful. And also it didn't create a huge dependency, right? For example, for Avalanche, I think to remember that validators of our chain had to hold the Avalanche token in order to be able to validate that, right? And I think for XRP holders, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So essentially for composability, easy to use, production ready, because also Evmos had a few production ready chains at the moment. So it felt like the best option. So we move forward with this technology.
Yeah, I don't really have too much context and insight of the XRP ledger itself, its ecosystem. The only projects I was or am familiar with to this point is Sologenic, which I think is a DEX on the XRP ledger, and then I think another project called Coreum that spun out of this and also launched their own Cosmos chain, and also with it a connection to XRP ledger. But can you maybe talk more about kind of the state of the XRP ecosystem, about any kind of on-chain applications, or and in that context also, like, where does the XRP Ledger sidechain that you have built, where does that come in, and what does it unlock specifically for, I guess, mainly the XRP Ripple community, but also maybe for the Cosmos community?
Yeah. I don't have like the full list of projects on top of my mind. Obviously, XRP Ledger is a very huge community. So there's a large list of protocols and projects there. But essentially, I'm linking to the why, right? Which I think is interesting, is that for all the new features, so XRP Ledger has been adding, new features such as the AMM. I think there were plans for a lending protocol. They launched NFTs back in the day. So they've been launching and following with most of the industry trends. But one of the problems two problems that we figured out is that in one side, building amendments on the XRP ledger is extremely difficult because our protocol native, right? It's not like in a smart contract. So for example, the NFTs went out, almost a year after the NFT boom, and the NFT boom didn't last for a long time. So by the time we launched the NFTs on the XRP ledger, the activity around NFTs was already declining a lot. So there is like a time to market factor there that it's very important. That for XRP ledger, maybe it's not the best place to do that, because also if you launch a feature that then it's not used enough, it sits on the protocol forever, right? So I think a good place to do that is having, for example, on EVM, right? You can launch smart contracts, and then if something is successful, you can launch it very fast, be there in the market. If something is successful, if something is meaningful and lasts for a long time, then probably makes sense to make an amendment and add to the XRP ledger itself as a native protocol feature. But if you do the innovation on the protocol itself, it takes too much time. You not get there on time, and still, if it's not successful in the long run, you just makes the ledger more heavy without any benefit. So that's one of the points that the flexibility of Ethereum, let's say, helps you, fail in a short period of time, which I think that is very interesting. The other thing is also the differentiation, right? So for example, when we launched the AMM, which is a feature that it's long sustained and successful across all the ecosystems, one of the problems is that if the implementation, the logic, it's implemented natively on the ledger as a protocol, then everyone has the same logic, right, for the AMM. So essentially, the only differentiation for partners, it's the front end and the user experience, but you cannot build very different protocol level structures. And this also creates a problem that, for example, we launch the AMM, but then if there is new protocols, as for example with Uniswap with concentrated liquidity or Curve or other stuff like that, you need to do also protocol upgrades, or the project doesn't have a very big way to differentiate. So I think for institutional DeFi makes a lot of sense because XRP Ledger launches these features pretty well tested, natively, much more fast, much more efficient than any Ethereum smart contract, right? And this is a feature that it's very secure and they can provide to all these institutions. But for the Web3 or the retail part, what do you want is to be able to have much more differentiation and to test things and be much more agile, right? And I think for that Ethereum it's much better. So this is why also these two problems that happen on the XRP ledger, the time to market and the differentiation, are very good for institutional DeFi, but are not very good for the Web3 retail, which everything evolves on the blink of an eye, and you need to be very fast and very creative in order to make some noise, right? So in order to solve all that, also we thought it was a good idea to have this separate sidechain, which doesn't create any issue or any overload on the XRP ledger itself. That also helps onboard all this innovation and this DeFi that it's happening on the Web3 in a much faster time with full compatibility with all the existing tooling, MetaMask, EVM, all the contracts that are there, even like applications like, I don't know, OpenSea at the time, or DeFi applications can just support our network. So we don't need to onboard or build new people, but we can get tier 1 partners that also support the network itself because it's very easy for them to integrate. So that's a very interesting role for, I will say, retail Web3 DeFi.
Yeah, I think institutional DeFi is definitely also a big trend now. We're seeing all these big corps, organizations entering crypto, and I also have a hot take, which is that in a few years, I don't know, 2-3 years, crypto Twitter will be replaced by crypto LinkedIn. Like, I was always super anti LinkedIn, but now, even for preparations that we're in now for customers this year, like, we're making incredible connections on LinkedIn, and it's because also traditional organizations, institutions, governments are now actually trying to be involved. They're trying to embrace, they're trying to maybe even build their own thing, right? And I think Cosmos is well positioned as a philosophy, as a tech stack that you can build your own sovereign, custom, optimized blockchain or execution environment for whichever industry you're in. And I think that's very interesting. But also for institutional DeFi, right? When I think of Ripple, and again, I'm an outsider here. I don't really know much about the ins and outs of the XRP ledger, top applications, those kind of things. But one of the things that definitely comes to my mind first is like this incredible network of institutions and organizations. So my question is, because you have developed this also in coordination and close partnership with Ripple itself, is also part of this institutional network of Ripple now going to deploy on this sidechain, or are you trying to attract new builders, or what's the game plan there?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's the chain is permissionless, so essentially everyone can join. So I think the sidechain has like two roles here. One is, as I was mentioning, tapping into the retail, DeFi, and Web3. Institutions normally they are not very good at innovation, right? So normal institutions, they wait, they see what's happening, and the things that are solid 5 or 10 years later, they integrate that, right? So we've seen, Bitcoin was out there, and then after almost 10 years, we've seen banks offering Bitcoin, right? That sounds like a very, very simple use case, but they see what lasts now, then with Ethereum and with the staking and ETFs and all this stuff. So I think innovation is never going to die. I think innovation is going to keep being built by all these amazing teams in Silicon Valley, all around the world actually, that are going to push the Web3 initiatives forward. And the things that are successful there, after a few years, we will going to see them adopted by institutions. So we want to be part of that. We want to contribute onto the new innovations that are happening on the DeFi and the Web3 space. I think the XRP EVM is well positioned for that. Also to be part and expose XRP to all these protocols. XRP has an incredible market cap and volume, but if you think about it, it's you cannot find XRP almost anywhere else than the XRP ledger. So I think opening and providing XRP to participate on all these Web3 DeFi, I think that's something very, very valuable for the token and for the project itself. And then on the other side, for institutional adoption, I think the XRP ledger, it's very well positioned for that, because institutions doesn't want to handle with smart contracts and nonsense and all these kind of things. Maybe they do, but they want, like, the XRP ledger provides a very simple API where you can just call these functions and are very secure and very fast and efficient and well done. So I think the XRP ledger will still be extremely relevant for that. But if some of those institutions, for whatever reason, they also want to integrate with EVM compatible software, or they have another custody provider, or they have other tools, but they want to work with Ripple and the XRP ledger, they can also use the XRP EVM, because now we have this layer, right? And the currency is still XRP, which is bridged natively in a decentralized bridge as well. So I think it can also be a very useful tool, definitely interesting for institutions.
Can you explain the economics, the chain economics? Because you mentioned earlier there's no native new coin. XRP is the native coin, but there are validators, right? Which unfortunately with Stakecito we didn't make it in yet, but we're going to try. But there's validators, so you have kind of that group to incentivize. Then there's obviously on-chain activity. Then there's the network security. So can you maybe explain how that all works, and what's the economic long-term kind of path to sustainability in that ecosystem?
Sure, yeah. So the fundamentals of the XRP ledger itself, on the consensus mechanism, is this kind of proof of authority, which is based on unique node lists. It's based on a trust system. So essentially, if I trust a network of people, I can put them on the list, and then other people can trust another network of people, and the intersection that 80% of the people it's trusting, this generates the validator list in a very simplified way. We just call this UNL, that it's about 35 validators on XRP ledger. So these validators are not getting paid for running the validators. This is based on the perception that the best incentive is no incentive. So you don't want mercenaries that just takes down the validators, or are there just for getting network fees. You want people that actually uses the chain and is interested in the long-term commitment of the chain. So this is how the XRP ledger has been governed for these 12 plus years without any incident, and with a very good model. Now for the XRP EVM, we wanted to have a similar approach. So we've also set up a proof of authority that it's composed about 32 validators. Everyone is doing its own due diligence. Validators can be proposed and removed by the existing authority. So the philosophy is the same. The only difference here is that the network fees, we are not burning them, we are giving it to the validators. So that's the only difference with the XRP ledger. I think for EVM chains that may be much more heavy, and also for how it's structured and the incentives are being set up in the industry, especially in Ethereum, I think it's important to keep some rewards for validators, at least to cover your validator costs. So we are not selecting validators. It's not like a proof of stake. So the validators are being selected in the spirit of the XRP ledger by trust and by due diligence and by long-term commitment. But then they get the XRPs as part of their network fees. This is for now how it's structured. I don't discard the idea that in the future we open or we change the protocol fees to a form of proof of stake that essentially much more people can be part of, or we change the structure that, for example, these fees goes to reward the ecosystem or provides some kind of yield for XRP. But the proof of stake, if you don't have inflation, we cannot create more XRPs, right? So the inflation is zero essentially. So if we cannot create more XRPs and everyone is taking XRPs on the EVM sidechain, still the network fees will need to scale a lot in order to give a significant yield, right? So we are open and thinking ways to incentivize more the ecosystem, but in terms of security, we are not very worried because the philosophy is the same of the XRP ledger. It's not dependent on the network fees itself. And actually a lot of the validators are also validators on the XRP ledger. So I think in security wise, it's a good model because it doesn't depend on the network and the token price. But in terms of incentivization for using the network, I think there's opportunity to explore ways to use these fees for something else than just rewarding validators.
What is your relationship with Ripple nowadays after a chain is live? Because you mentioned also in the beginning that they're also potentially, I'm not sure if I understood correctly, but potentially considering to integrate EVM programmability directly on the main chain, or
no, as far as I'm concerned, the latest research it's going to add programmability on the XRP ledger, but it's not going to be EVM. So still EVM programmability, it's going to be very interesting, right? For example, if you see Solana, they had I think it's called Neon EVM. It's the EVM compatible sidechain for Solana. So Solana had programmability, but they launched this sidechain that also covers a significant portion of the use cases, and it has a big number of activity, right? So I think EVM compatibility will be always useful, or at least for a long period of time. For too many years, too much people has been building on top of Ethereum. So even if everyone starts building, in top of any other virtual machine now, it will take a lot of years that the same amount of libraries and features are matched, right? I think it's way ahead Ethereum in terms of programmability than most of the other ecosystems.
Gotcha. Also interested in your opinion on the state of the Cosmos Hub and Atom, because I think you've also been in touch and probably also collaborating with Interchain Labs, the new leadership in Cosmos, Mark and Barry. I think you also went to their Sovereign EVM event in Cannes, South France last month. So, which I think was actually the day of mainnet launch, right? The day of the event. So can you, what are your thoughts on the state of Atom, also in context of, the strategic move to basically not pursue the integration of the EVM on the Cosmos Hub, but instead turn it in a different direction, at least strategically from the ICF or ICL point of view. So what are your thoughts on that?
To be honest, I didn't deep a lot or spend a lot of time thinking on that. But in general, I knew, a lot of part of the ICL team, Mark, Barry, Nico, few others. So I think it's a very, very capable team. Lots of energy. I think they are going to achieve amazing things. We've worked with a lot of protocols, and sometimes the teams are not that energetic, or if the protocol has been launched a long time ago, sometimes there is not that many initiatives going there. So I think like the new ICL, it's full of energy, full of ideas, very execution driver. I think they are doing things pretty well. I didn't being part of the Cosmos community before that, so I cannot compare with the past. But so far, all I hear from people on Cosmos, it's pretty positive. So I think it's essentially a well perceived change within the community. So yeah, I think they are a very great team. Regarding the decision of the EVM on Cosmos Hub, I didn't had a lot of time to deep into it, but I'm sure they will have their own reasons. But in any case, I think they are also making a big bet on the Cosmos EVM technology for other teams. Most of the more important chain launches over the last months has been launching on top of Cosmos, and most of them Cosmos EVM. So I think the Interchain stack is very, very solid. In my opinion, it's the best option by far right now, and the results say the same. And I know that they are also doing a lot of updates on the stack. So for us, I think that's a fantastic thing. And yeah, also for all the people that was thinking to build on top of Cosmos Hub, having EVM, that are looking for a new home, we are open and happy to talk. The XRPL EVM is recently launched. It's an extremely big ecosystem right now in terms of potential due to the XRP market cap. So we are welcoming and happy to talk to anyone that is interested in looking for a new home. We can host them.
Did you get connected to the Stride team already?
Yeah, we've been connected to a few teams, and we are talking to a few teams. Yeah.
And those that are interested in understanding and getting more context on the EVM plans being scratched for the Cosmos Hub, I did an interview with Mark the day after the announcement, which was like a week and a half ago. It feels like it was 3 months ago, but it was like last week. So I did an interview with him last week. It's a rather long interview. If you watch on 2x, it's like 20 minutes, but it was a 46-minute conversation, but very insightful. And like I said, I think, I've been in Cosmos since like late 2020, and the Cosmos community went through a lot. Obviously, a lot of the innovation that was there from the very early days also was stress tested, to put it like that. So I think there was a lot of infighting, a lot of drama, but I think now with this new leadership, there is fresh new wind, well-respected, young, ambitious guys that are sitting at the steering wheel. And I think that's very refreshing, and we're very excited. And also to have builders like you being actively engaged and also collaborating with them, with the foundation, is also very, very refreshing to see, because we didn't have that in Cosmos, right? So yeah, that's cool. I have 2 more questions. One, maybe we can do it first, like a random question. Why XRPL EVM? Like, do you think about like having another name, or are you going to stick with that name? It's just something I had on my.
Well, the name is I don't know exactly. I don't remember exactly how was the process of decision, but essentially, I think the idea was to put a name that you read it and you understand what it is, right? I think this is well achieved. It's maybe not super original name, but I think it's good because people reads it, and it has the direct vinculation with the XRP ledger, not just XRP. And also it's telling you that it's EVM compatible, right? So I think this is a good name, and for people to just understand and remember, it's pretty fine. And we had already a brand like the XRP Ledger. It's a brand itself. So if you build something new, there's thousands of chains launching every year, and you can get lost in the middle of the noise.
No, definitely very self-explanatory, and also makes it sound very official. But so no renaming to Ferran chain. Not counting.
I don't think so.
Okay, then final question. mainnet is now live. What is the next short-term game plan for you?
Well, there's a lot of work. So we have work in different directions. Technically, we still are overdue. We need to migrate the repos from Evmos to Cosmos EVM. So we will be much more up to date. So that's one of the technical things that we need to do. Then also in terms of more operational part, we need to do onboarding. So getting more people on board and facilitate onboarding. Right now, the process to get there is via bridging, which is still, I don't think it's I think bridges should be only used by solvers or market makers, right? So I think there's a few networks of solvers that essentially you can, put whatever asset you have and exchange it for XRP or whatever asset you want on the XRPL EVM. This intent should be solved in a matter of few seconds, and then someone behind the scenes will use the bridge to rebalance everything, right? I think this is the direction that the industry is taking. So right now, the bridging process is still a little bit complex. This needs to be, it needs to be improved. Squid Router, was a product on top of Axelar, had a solver network called Coral, and we are going to put some liquidity there, and this is going to be live in the next few weeks, I guess. So I think that will improve and facilitate a lot for people to access to the EVM sidechain from whatever other network, and also to add liquidity, because right now it's very difficult to add liquidity on the chain because there is almost no routes available. And it's a chicken and egg problem that if you don't have liquidity, people cannot put liquidity, and you need to break this chicken and egg problem, right? So that's one of the things. Then the other things we are going to solve it, as I was mentioning, liquidity. We need to set up some incentives for people to put liquidity there. So we are working with Ripple to different strategies to facilitate that. So there's nothing announced, nothing out there. And it may take a while, but we are working in incentives for people to put liquidity in the ecosystem and to grow our own DeFi ecosystem there. And then last but not least, it's DeFi apps, right? We have about 20 significant apps on the ecosystem that it's growing every day. But also we want to have more the apps onboarded, as you were mentioning. There's a lot of, for example, opportunities with the apps that were about to launch on Cosmos Hub that now can launch there. So we want to support more builders from the XRP ledger and from outside the XRP ledger that comes and build there. Also, we want to make integrations with tier 1 apps. So there is like these big apps that support a few networks. And I think when our network is in shape enough and it has enough users and enough volume, then it will be an interesting network to be supported by some of the top Web3 or Ethereum compatible the apps in the ecosystem. And we want to be part of that as well. So this is some of the things we are going to work on.
Is that mostly focused on DeFi, or is it also, can it be anything like gaming or?
It can be anything. Gaming is a perfect use case as well, because essentially what we want is to cover the use cases that are not covered by the XRP ledger. And gaming, for example, is one of those. With the probability of the XRP ledger launching a game, it's a game itself, right? It's very, very difficult. So this is some of the use cases that if people want to build on top of the XRP ledger or they want to use XRP, I think that will be covered. DeFi, it's obviously an obvious choice because the DeFi didn't explode on the XRP ledger as we've seen in other ecosystems, and I think it's a very good product market fit. So we want to have DeFi, finally, DeFi that it's not possible on the XRP ledger. So, smart contracts, new versions of Uniswaps, or more advanced lending protocols, futures, etc. So all these kind of products that requires much more programmability and are not available for XRP ledger, they can sit on the XRPL EVM. But yeah, essentially the network is permissionless. We are open to other use cases. Prediction markets, it's super interesting to me. It's one of the best use cases of blockchain for me. So very looking forward to have some prediction markets there as well, and we will be able to, or we'll try at least to support the protocols that are, building more seriously and being more successful on the chain to make sure they grow and they access the XRP Ledger community.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you so much for your time, and hope to see you at Cosmos this year again. And yeah, maybe we can do this sometime in the future when there's a thriving DeFi ecosystem. And yeah, all the best, man. This was a good conversation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Cito, for having us. I'm looking forward to attend Cosmoverse this year as well, for sure. Thank you for having us.
Gracias. Adios. Ciao, ciao.
Take care. Bye-bye.